Appreciate everybody being here for the second part of taking a closer look at applying closure. And this part is really intended just to be an interactive thing, and see if we can maybe, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear from you guys, what your interest is, and maybe something about what your applications are like, and if you have some thoughts of how this might be usable and might fit with what you're doing, or if you've looked at it and maybe thought maybe doesn't seem like it really would. I wish it would do what something for me, but it doesn't look like it's going to do that, and maybe we can explore that a little bit. I think what we really want to do is get people, I said before, the last part, aware of this for one thing, and then just stimulate some thinking about how it can be used. And if we find that it needs some adjustment to make it fit use cases, then we ought to feed that back in and get the specification updated, because we just haven't gotten a lot of traction yet. We need to start doing some connectathon testing on this. We've been kind of focusing on the bread and butter terminology services applications, and mostly we've gotten a lot of traction with expand and lookup and some of the subsumes and some of the other ones, but we haven't done too much yet with this one. So that's why I wanted to bring this up today and see where we can go with it. So maybe it'd be good to just kind of go around the room a little bit and let people say just a few words at least about about those things, and why you're here and what you're interested in, and so maybe can I pick on somebody and start over here? Does that work?
Sure. Like my colleague here, I wasn't actually at the last session, so I'm doing a bit of catch up here. But
yeah, sure.
From reading your documentation, it seems that we can use closure to slice and dice pictures of coded records to pick out particular bits.
Okay, so I'm gonna make sure I got that. So slice and dice, which kinds of data?
For instance, if you wanted to pick out all of the pathology tests going
Mm-hmm.
forward, that's the thing. Whereas in the coding systems we had in the UK before, you could tell from the code that it was a pathology test because it started with a 6 or a 7.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
now actually we have to go to the terminology
Right.
repeatedly
Yeah.
to find out, is this a pathology test
Yeah.
or not? And I was reading between the lines, I might be completely wrong, that closure could be a good way of doing that.
I think it could be. Yeah. It's certainly the kind of thing it could do.
And that's really my interest.
Okay, that's very good. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, just go ahead and pass it around. You pass it. Yeah.
So, a similar kind of problem, because I'm also from the UK, in that we certainly in primary care, historically we've used sort of V2 or CTV3 terminologies, where the terminology identifier has semantic meaning, and we have a lot of legacy processes which depend on that. So at the moment we take in records, and we will take all the different all the different records coming in, and we will put them into different buckets compared based on those codes. So these are to do with maternity, and these are to do with vital signs observations, and so on and so forth. And now we have to do the same on using StoneMed. We've been looking at sort of trying to look at, say, whether we could create a StoneMed ECL expression which kind of mimics that separation before. And technically we can, but previously we would slice and dice the record into 20 or 30 different types of data.
Yeah.
But now what we would be even though that would technically work, what we would need to do is come in and say, we've got a code. Is it one of those? No. Is it one of those? No. So we'd have to do that 30 times until we found the one that it hit.
Yeah.
Which is just not a very efficient way of processing. It's
the same issue, isn't it? It's moving away from reading to testimony.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a key problem. I mean, all the others now sort of the sort of lookup and sort of and just generally, is this within this ref set, or does this subsume that one? Then that's really good functionality, and that's really useful. But it's this whole closure thing I really haven't got my head around.
Yeah. Well, that's good though, Richard. I appreciate that. Yeah.
the beginners just to want to find out new functionalities of FHIR. So actually,
Okay.
that it's so I couldn't tell you much more about my experience in FHIR.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
I work for Philips, and in Philips we are building a in-house FHIR server. We already have it already built it, but we don't have the terminology service attached to a FHIR server. So we plan to do that in the coming year. So I was just trying to understand how the terminology services are used and what are the operations and how exactly you try to use an operation. So what it takes is what I was trying to understand, and hence I'm attending all the terminology sessions.
Okay. And did you get to the other terminology sessions?
Yes, I attended some yesterday. And
Yeah, yeah. Good. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. That's
Yeah, hi. So we have a microbiology use case.
Okay.
So I'll be looking at doing subsumption testing.
That's what I was just talking about earlier.
Probably
Yeah.
the same use case on SNOMED organism hierarchy.
Okay. Well, what kind of data feeds are you getting with that? I mean, what kind of data sets are you working with and all that? I mean, so you getting live, incoming data that you're processing, or what are you? Yeah.
So right now it's V2 messages
Mhm,
from
yeah.
the lab. And yeah, we're looking at doing it in FHIR in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
what was the question?
The question's basically, what your interest is in this topic and what kind of issues you have in your applications and whether you think something like this might be useful or whether it doesn't seem like it quite matches what, just whatever your thoughts are about it, basically. Yeah.
I don't have too much to say because I'm here to learn. We're dealing with large data sets of pretty heterogeneous data that is in FHIR but doesn't
What kind of data?
patient data, cancer patients. We are a cancer-specific EHR.
What? I'm sorry?
Cancer-specific EHR.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But pretty inconsistent in terms of which ontologies we use. And so I'm
Okay.
here to learn how this can help.
Okay.
So I'm working for an electronic data capture platform. So we allow researchers to store their research data in our platform, and we are currently looking for a way to store data or allow researchers to code their data with some ontology concepts. So we're looking into terminology servers. So
Mhm.
that's why this might be interesting for us as well.
Okay.
I'm working for a company that builds EHR for general practitioners and in Belgium, and we are obliged to become users of Loink and SNOMED and things like that in the coming years. So we have legislation coming on, and so I'm here to learn more about how we can use it, and I'm a beginner on that.
Okay. Very good.
Hi, I also have kind of a clinical research focus, so I think when I was thinking about this, I was wondering if you could use it to, query patients eligible for clinical trials. It's kind of one of the things that you don't really have a way to do across multiple sites very easily right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it probably could have some utility with that. Yeah. I believe it would, depending on how you kind of set up your criteria and all that. Yeah.
I'm currently working for a German hospital. We're trying to build a so-called medical data integration center. So I'm pretty actually new in this field. I'm trying to get some take-home knowledge of FHIR. Probably we're using, because currently we have a database-based medical system, so the basic just some database tables. We're trying to probably using this terminology to translate so from the old system to a new, I don't know, the standard FHIR terminology system. I don't know. I hope I can learn a lot from this course.
Okay. And this is, definitely not a, the first level thing for terminology services or whatever, but there's been some good talks here earlier in the week, and it'd be good to review some of those for, I'll probably do that myself again, go back and listen to what everybody had to say. So I think what we want to, what we might want to do now, it sounds like we've got a bit of a mix of, folks' interests and backgrounds and stuff, and we've got a few pretty good use cases here, I think. I said some of this in the previous session. Some of you weren't here, but I'm not really here kind of considering myself necessarily to be an expert in this, using this operation, although I've had background using the very similar thing for the very similar use cases what Julian was talking about with microbiology data. But that was well before FHIR was ever dreamed of and all of that, but we came up with a kind of similar solution, which was kind of interesting. But so I have that experience, but as a vocabulary co-chair and FHIR Terminology Specification Editor, what I've noticed over the last, in doing the Connectathons at the HL7 meetings, noticed that this hasn't gotten picked up, and so I wanted to raise the awareness of it and see whether we might start, because I think it does, I think it will meet some needs that are out there. So I'd like to figure out, this together, kind of how we can explore that further and make that, see if we can make that happen. So I apologize in a sense that I don't have anything more sophisticated for you as far as the exercise. I started with some really basic stuff, and this is the first time I've ever taught this material in this way. We started at the DevDays back in Redmond, back in June. We got into it just a little bit, but not at the same level, and particularly with the hands-on bit. So I wanted to give us at least something we could kind of take a look at and try to dive into. And I don't know how much folks are interested in banging on the server and trying to write some code and all that. It's a little bit hard to imagine anybody, myself or anyone else, can probably write a whole lot of code in 40 minutes, but still, you might be able to do something. And we might be able to talk through, some further things that could be done, and then we could, bring that back for another, time and kind of more refined. So I can kind of talk through, a little bit about what I put together here and why, or we could talk further about use cases. We can kind of make this whatever you guys want, really. Because it's pretty unscripted. So I'm happy to do whatever's most useful and just kind of explore it together. So I thought that maybe, I showed for at least some of you, not everybody was here, but I showed most of the steps in the queries in using the Postman REST tool on the previous part of the session. So we could finish that out, I think, maybe, and then we could look at, we could explore some more queries if you want to do that, and I can kind of walk through what I wrote on the code, and it doesn't do very much, but it does a little bit. So let's maybe, if I could go back to Postman here. So we got to the third step, and there's, in the exercise sheet, maybe I'll show you this before, well, actually, yeah. Down at, where is it here?
Where is that exercise sheet? Because it's not on the list, it's on the website.
It should be. It's on there now. It should be there. You don't see it? Okay. Maybe, well, it's in my, it's uploaded there, so I assumed it would be immediately available, but I don't know, maybe not. Well, apologies for that, but so if you don't have it, that's not good. I can, what would be the best way? I could put it on put a Google Drive link or something like that, or actually just get it right out of Dropbox. Let's see, I've got it on Google Drive right now. Maybe I could post a link on a slide here or something, and you could download it. Let me do that just a second. Let's see, I need to get a new window here. So apologies it wasn't there. It has been uploaded, so make this bigger. Okay, so if I go and do it this way. Yeah, I think it'd be easier to see what I'm talking about if you have that in your hands. Get that bigger here a second. So it's all right, so the exercise is here. No, it's the wrong one. Okay. Got a bunch of them on there. Yeah, there it is. All right, so I think what I can do is go ahead and make a link on this. Open with Google Drive. Copy link to clipboard. And I'll share it with Google Drive. So it's shareable link. Okay, so let's see. Anyone? Sorry, that's gonna take a second here. So get it. Anyone with a link, that's what I want. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me put this in the document and you guys can, hopefully it won't be too horrible to look at. It's kind of bad. It's pretty bad. But, yeah, that's really ugly. But if you tell me what's the easiest way to do that, I certainly use that, but I've not done it. I don't really know how to set it up. I mean, so it's not just something I haven't done.
You want to just if you private message me on Zoom or something.
Okay, I'll do that.
I'll sort it out while you're talking.
Okay, that'll work. Yeah, yeah, we can do that. Sorry?
Yeah, I'll do that while you're talking.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I mean, I know all those things are available, but I don't really use them much. So maybe if Richard can do that, that'd be great. So, all right, let's get you up here. Okay, so new private message. There we go. Yeah. Say it again. Okay. H-A-L-I. Okay, there you are. Anybody else want to be added on the Zulip? Deepa? Okay. Deepa Kumar? No? Yeah, okay. Let me add the A. Okay. So, sorry. Went to the wrong spot there. Okay. Yeah? Sorry. Okay. Let's see. D? Ah. Let's see. I'm not getting it. You're in Zulip? Oh, I'm sorry. D-E-S-A-I. I don't see you. I don't know. Oh, is this it? No, it's not, is it? I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't see you coming up. But did I spell it D-E-E-P-A? Yes. Yeah. And then D. Oh, I'm sorry. You said E. Yes, you did. It doesn't come up though. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry. Anybody else?
Andy Iverson.
Andy. Okay. Andy. What is it? Oh, was it? Sorry, I didn't see it.
IB. No, I'm not that good.
I didn't-
Last name starts with an I.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah, so. Yeah,
There you go.
okay.
Martijn, so that's Martin with J after the I.
Okay, Sid Mark.
Martijn, so it's
Oh, oh, yes, yes. Sorry, I didn't catch it. Yeah, okay. Yes.
and I think it's a third one.
Kersloot? Okay. All right. Julian, yeah? Yeah, yeah, I know you. Yeah, oh, there's Graham. Get on there. But, okay. Yeah. All right. I'll go ahead and send this. So, Graham popping up. Sorry, I can find you on there, but Graham popping up. Remind me, I wanted to mention that I had said in the other session that basically the FHIR Terminology Server that Graham maintains does closure, but it wasn't doing it when I was preparing for this talk. It was broken, but he's fixed it as usual. It doesn't take long. And he did make an interesting comment, which I think makes a lot of good sense, and it's something we would want to be considering while if we're going to be, having many of us at the same time working through any exercises here. So, and that is that his server is going to require that the name be the name is a GUID, not just an arbitrary string, because you need to avoid having collisions of context, basically. If we've got multiple people hitting the same thing, then it's going to, have completely useless and totally unpredictable results. So you would want, and you need to be aware of that in any uses that you would have to make sure you got unique context identifiers, unique names. So he's using a GUID, or you need to authenticate to the server with OAuth, for his server. So that's a little more complicated to use that way, but because you don't have to do that with Onto server, but you just have to have a unique name string for sure. So if we would have multiples of us hitting Onto server at the same time, we need to each pick our own, name that we wouldn't be colliding. So that's definitely important. So let's see. So anyway, that's the link to the exercise, and does anybody else who didn't get on the Zulip want it on Zulip, or can anybody else? Oh, Richard's, working on that, right? Are you going to be able to do that? Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier, you're right. So when that happens, okay. Okay, so in the meantime, let me go back, and like I said, we got through the first 3 steps, and so I can kind of show what they are. We have the inputs and outputs on them, so we can go back to that real quick. So we start off, the first thing is we pass in, we post, we have basically the command, so it's a post. The operation is always invoked with a post, except for a few rare cases where you can actually send the parameters by a get, but if you need to send the actual codes in a coding, you really need to post a parameters resource, and so that's going to be the normal way it's done. And it's done on the server base endpoint, not the concept map endpoint, even though it's a concept map based operation. And as I said before, I don't honestly know why that decision was made to do it that way, but it works, and that's the way it is. So, but anyway, so we basically post the parameters resource with just the name, and I used a simple non-GUID name, what I did, just test closure, and that initializes the the table, and you get back a concept map resource, which basically just has some metadata. Doesn't have any other content, and it's version 1. And so that's what the server returns, the first step. That starts with a blank, empty closure table. And then the next step is you basically do a similar thing, but you basically post the same command, but you add, you include a concept. You give it a concept to start working with. Now, and so you do, one at a time, basically, as you encounter, the data, and you make the request to the server. And then in this case, you get back version 2 of the concept map, but the metadata, it's just metadata again. It looks exactly the same. And it looks that way because there's nothing for it to compare, whether it's, has a relationship, because there's only one concept there, so it doesn't have anything to return. When we get to the third step, then we do a little bit more. We give it another concept, and now it's got 2 concepts, that it can compare and see if there's a relationship between them, and and it'll tell you about that. Is there a subsumption relationship basically between those 2 concepts? And so you get back, something like this. So you get the metadata again, and then but now you get some actual, results. You've got a group which has a group always has the same source and target value sets. Basically, it establishes the context of a map, and so it's going to give you that information. And then the element itself is what really is the mapping. So you have the first code, in this case, which would be the source, and then the second code we gave it is going to be the target, and it says that the equivalence relationship is subsumes. And we had the comment last time, and it's probably worth repeating, that relationships are between source and target, but then the way it's been in concept map is that they're basically described based on how the target looks compared to the source. So it kind of goes both ways, and people are finding that confusing. And the proposal is to change all that for R5. We're basically switching to a new element, and a new code system and value set, and some new codes, and maybe all new codes when we get to the end of it. So instead of having an equivalence element like you see here, in R5 this will be relationship, and it'll be a simpler code system and value set to choose from. You won't have to decide whether it's subsumes or or wider or narrower specializes or equal or equivalent, those kind of things which people had a hard time just figuring out. So that all is going to go away, basically, and you just be left with, it's either related and you don't know what the relation is, or it's equivalent, or it's broader or narrower, or it's not related. It's going to be simpler. But it means that in getting this direction thing worked out, we'll have to essentially reverse the meaning of the codes. And I think we're going to propose to use new codes for those, so there won't be any confusion with the old ones. But that's still in process, though. Anyway, but so I just want main take-home point on that is it's going to change for R5, but it should be better. So, and we're at a maturity level 3, so we can make those kind of changes, at this point. So anyway, so now we have the relationship that came back, and now we can go on to the next step. So basically, what we keep doing at this point is just keep giving it code. So we get new data, we we basically pass that to the, we say this is not in my closure table yet, so it's new. So I need to give it to the terminology server and let the terminology server tell me whether it's related to any of the other, the other codes I've given it already. And so that's what it's going to do. It's going to be a cumulative thing. So we can go ahead and do that, and so basically, it's just another SOMID code. Everything looks, essentially the same. And then what we get back is we're going to have some additional relationships. We've got more than one this time. Again, we have the same context. We've got the same source and target. But here we've got relationships, subsumes relationship between these 2 concepts and these 2. So that's what, and so we basically take that data from the terminology server and say, okay, we need to add that to our local closure table. And I'm not showing you that part of it, putting it in a table, but you can put it in any kind of table that you want. Whatever you're going to use in your application. So it could be, relational database table. It can be, a Java or JavaScript array or something like that, or an in-memory, database or whatever it might be. But anyway, you store it locally, and then you can use it very quickly at runtime as you get more data. Next time you encounter those same kind of data, it'll already you already have information about what the relationships are. And you don't have to be cluttered up by all of the 6 million, SNOMED relationships in the full transitive closure table. I think maybe where that would be, maybe the most important would be when you're dealing with, the places where we still do maybe have a little bit of limitations on data, like we're doing mobile applications and things like that. That's probably going to be a lot more tractable than trying to deal with, full transitive closures. So anyways, that's the fourth step. And then there's a kind of a final step here we have, which is to say we have a special thing that you can do. And I don't honestly know for sure how many people would need to do this or want to do this, but it is built into the operation, and that is if you give it a version of 0, then it will go back and tell you the sum total of everything that it knows, basically, everything that you've put into the table. Now, we don't have very much in there yet, but, and I don't know exactly when people would want to invoke that, but, because you've already built your table, and you don't necessarily need the terminology server to regurgitate it back to you, because you already have it, so, but it is, it is there, so I'll just show what it looks like. So it should have all the relations. I didn't actually go through this finally to see, but it should have all the relationships that we had, return, and it looks like it does. So that's what that does. And then if we wanted to start over, if we had something change in our code system, we get a new SNOMED release or new LOINC release, or we update, have to add some special codes in our extension, and we. That might happen really frequently, potentially, and if we got new relationships, we may not, our subsumptions may be different now, and we maybe need to have the additional ones, and so we can't rely on that same table, so we'll basically reinitialize it and then start building it up again. But it's fairly small, so it's not that hard to build up. It's not that big a hit, and if you got when I was doing it with the microbiology stuff, and it sounds like what Julian is doing as well, you've got a lot of different kinds of data, but you do see a lot of the same, the organisms and things, they're coming multiple times, and so you hit the server once, and you find, even if you reinitialize the table, that cache, table, that closure table builds up fairly quickly, and then it gets pretty stable. So it seems to be a reasonable strategy. So that's, how it looks, just basically hitting the REST endpoint. And it's a really simple operation, actually, But the part of it I'm not showing here, and I don't really show much of in the other little bit of code I wrote, is, how exactly you want to take this knowledge and store it and use it locally. Because again, you may, if you were in a relational database environment, then you would probably, you would have this as a partial, as a closure table that you would be maintaining, and you would do joins on it, and you would incorporate it into your searching strategy for your data. And you wouldn't be having to hit the terminology server every time you needed to do that. You'd basically leverage the database for that. And whatever kind of techniques you would be using to deal with terminology in your applications, you could use similar kinds of things. So that's the idea. Now and I realized if I had, again, this is the first time I've ever even gone through at this level, this with any group, but, it'd be nice to build out some more elegant examples where you could really show what the power of this is, and, maybe have a semi-realistic application that we could show people. I think that would be something to strive for the future. And, if you guys have any ideas about that, I'd love to hear about it. And I'll keep working on it myself. So the next thing we could do is possibly take a look at that code. And I'm thinking, let's see what would be the best way to do that. We can pull it up in GitHub, I guess, because you will be able to do that once you get the link. And again, I apologize that you don't have it.
If you go back into Sula now, then I'll put the links on there.
Okay, great, excellent. Yeah. So Okay, there it is. All right. All right, let me copy that then onto. Yeah, thanks, Richard, for doing that. Appreciate it. Okay, so this will be much easier to deal with. There we go. I'll make it even bigger. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. How are we doing? What's our time?
4 minutes left.
Oh, we just have 4? Okay, wow. Seems like. Is that right? Yeah, I guess it is. Well, let's see. I didn't think I'd talk that long. Okay, let me just quickly pull up the code here real quick. And I'll just kind of walk through what I was thinking when I did this. Let's see. Actually, that was already on there, wasn't it? Let's put the closure on there. So this is a totally simple and rather actually a kind of embarrassing application, but let me. So I just did this in Java and in the NetBeans IDE, which is because I already had some code already in there. I use Eclipse probably more, but anyways, I've got a lot of import statements. We don't need to look at that. But, I just used the happy R4 client to hit onto server. And so, like I said before, I did not pay any attention to the safety checklist for applications. So sorry, Diego and Graham, for that. But I hard-coded the server here and all that, which is a no-no. And a number of other things I didn't do. But anyway, it's not for prime time. So basically, we just initiate a client. And, then we set up the input parameters, to pass in. So I have to give it that context, that name closure test that I chose. And then I wrote it up so I could pass in arguments, multiple. You can pass multiple concepts in at the same time. And I tried to set it up to do that, but it didn't seem to work very well. So it works fine with one, but the multiple part wasn't working the way I expected, so I might have to debug that a little bit more. But anyway, it does work. And then you initialize an output parameter, basically for the parameters resource for the output, and you set that up, and then you basically invoke the client to get to the execute statement here, and then you retrieve the data, and you first have to get. There's only a single output parameter. It's just the concept map resource that comes back, and you basically retrieve that. So I get a concept map, and then I start diving into the concept map, and I just print out some of the data that's there basically. So it's pretty simple, but I think I can show it here just real quick before we have to end. Let's see. Okay, so I've got the Java file for this, and I think it should be. I was doing GitHub stuff there, so I'll have to get back to it a little bit. There it is, okay. So I've got what I can do. I'll just do this kind of with the client. Start off, initialize a table with it. It's got a. Fortunately, I'm getting debug output here. I'm not by default, and I haven't been able to get it turned off yet, so it's kind of annoying. But basically, it doesn't return any. The data is going to come down here under source code and target code, and so there's no data. I just initialize it. I've got an empty table, and then if I put in the code, I go back and have So it'll look. Again, basically the same as it did on the previous one. And then if I find one other code to put in, I'll grab that from Postman here. Let me just stick this guy. See if that was a different one. Yeah. Let's see what we get. So if I do that, then I do get, so it brings me back, basically a row that I can put in my closure table. So I can start building this up as I encounter more data and, extend that. And when I see those codes again, they'll already be there and I don't have to hit the terminology server for it. And again, that's how it basically works. So let's see. And that's pretty much, well, at least, I don't know if this code's any use to anybody, but at least it kind of shows how you can, I could take that data and I could, actually hook it into my relational database and start building up my closure table or something like that. So any final comments, questions, thoughts anybody has, at this point? So we end at the top of the hour, or is it already passed? We are, okay. All right, well, all right. So thanks for being here and participating. And if you have any further thoughts later today or anytime later and want to send an email or a Zulip chat, whatever, probably Zulip's really the best, but please feel free to do so. Let me know if you come up with any things that you're doing and that would be of interest to other people.